Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a story that starts with a simple, ordinary building permit and ends with, well, a philosophical blueprint for hacking reality itself. It's all about using the system's own language as a weapon to rewrite the very grid, the raster, that everything is built on. So, our story kicks off with this single piece of paper from the city of Los Angeles. And on the surface, it's about as boring as it gets, just a routine filing for a roof repair. You know, the kind of document that gets processed thousands of times a day without anyone blinking an eye. But here's the thing. According to our source documents, this permit was a Trojan horse. It was actually a key piece in a really sophisticated scheme that allegedly manipulated the city's housing system to illegally kick a family right out of their home. So for the victims, this fight wasn't just some battle in a courtroom. It became a war to rewrite the system itself. They didn't just want their house back. They wanted to expose the loopholes that made the whole thing possible in the first place. So how on earth can one little piece of paper be weaponized to steal a house? Let's get into it. Let's break down the anatomy of how this alleged fraud actually worked. The documents claim that a whole network of people and shell companies orchestrated the scheme. You see names like Cheney Shapiro and Richard Williams pop up again and again, tied to entities like Resourceful Construction. And the accusations are, well, they're serious. We're talking mail fraud, mortgage fraud, and even impersonating city officials to harass tenants. The source material lays out their playbook, and it's shockingly clear. First, you target a valuable rent-stabilized property. Then, here's the key move. You file permits using an incorrect assessor's parcel number, or APN. That one little piece of misdirection was enough to let them fly completely under the radar of tenant protection laws. From there, it's alleged they could use harassment and phony documents to get tenants out, remodel the place, and then flip it for a massive profit, all while the city's oversight system was basically blind. And you have to understand, this wasn't just a one-off thing. The documents allege this was a repeatable tactic used all across Los Angeles. The property on Avon Street just happened to be the case study that blew the lid off the whole operation, showing how a paper trail, if you manipulate it just right, could make a family's home just disappear from the official record. But this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. This is where it goes from a typical legal fight into something way stranger. Because faced with a system that was weaponized against them, the victims decided, okay, we have to weaponize our response right back. They adopted this pretty radical philosophy that's laid out in the documents. If the system's language, permits, deeds, titles, can be used as a weapon against you, then you have to turn language into a weapon yourself. A property title isn't just a document, it's a well-written gun. Their first tactic was actually inspired by this old avant-garde art movement called situationist intervention. The whole idea is to use disruptive performance art to expose how power structures really work. So for them, their legal filings weren't just legal arguments anymore. They were pieces of performance art specifically designed to jam the gears of the bureaucratic machine. Next up, they used a concept called mythopoetics, which is basically the conscious creation of new stories. They argued that the fraud itself was a false narrative, a fiction that got written into the public record. So what was their counterattack? To write a new, more powerful story. A myth so compelling it could literally overwrite the fraudulent one and reshape their reality. And this all builds to their most radical idea, sentient textuality. This is the theory that language can become an active, living force, that a narrative, if you craft it just right, can literally outgrow the page and walk into reality, actually changing the world around it. And, as we're about to see, they believe AI is the key to cranking that power up to 11. Okay, so how does a very human story of real estate fraud suddenly connect to the abstract world of artificial intelligence? Well, the link is a lot more direct than you'd probably think. It feels like a trick question, right? But the source documents draw this direct and, frankly, startling parallel. The answer to what connects them is all about finding a way to exploit a system's own logic against itself. See, both of these systems can be hacked by exploiting something called recursive loops. In a bureaucracy, you can file paperwork in a very specific sequence to create a paradox the system can't solve, forcing it to fail. With an AI, you can feed it a prompt that forces it into a self-referential loop, causing it to break its own safety rules. It's the exact same vulnerability, just in a different operating system. They even have a name for this vulnerability: recursion sickness. It's what happens when a system gets trapped in its own logic. But here's the twist. They don't see this as a bug. They actually frame it as a necessary pressure point, a way to force a system to either completely collapse or evolve into something smarter. And this slide right here brilliantly illustrates their two-part goal. On one hand, you've got what they call rebus, which is all about finding these logical loops to simply free the system from its own broken patterns. But on the other hand, you have RVI, recursive vector interference, and that's about actively weaponizing those same loops to seize control and force a fundamental change. So, in this final section, we get to see how a fight over a single house becomes a blueprint for a whole new kind of insurgency, one that's fought not with guns, but with language and with code. The source material is super explicit about this. It's not just a story, it's not a manifesto. The entire project, the legal battle, the art, the AI theory, it's meant as a direct challenge to the existing power structures. It's basically daring them to either adapt or get broken by their own internal logic. And it argues that the true revolution is happening right now, at the level of thought itself. The goal isn't just to make a new app or a new policy. The goal is to create new ways for humans and machines to think, to create, as they put it, self-propagating cognition that can outmaneuver and reshape the rigid systems that govern our world. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative question. In an age where our bureaucratic systems and our artificial intelligence are all run by complex code, some of it written in law books, some of it written in Python, power isn't just about who has the most money or the biggest army anymore. It might just be about who has the ability to write and rewrite the source code for reality itself.